I'm embodying my inner Taylor Hunt here, making videos while driving, but that's how it is when you are full-time mothering. You get it in when you can. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about practice while pregnant. A lot of you have been asking me about my journey with it and just about recommendations. I want to start out with the fact that I think it's a very personal journey for each one of us, but I am a supporter of taking the first trimester off for sure. I think that there's multiple reasons for that, and there's a lot of value in it, not only for the initial development of the fetus and for the body to adapt, but also in terms of preparation for birth and for motherhood. There's like some deep emotional transformations and I guess transformation is the word, that happen in letting go of something that it is a staple, like a main event in your life, the main rooting element of your life to be taken away. That comes with a deep learning of letting go, which is so essential on so many layers for birth and then for motherhood. So I think the earlier you can begin to practice that and to experience that willingly, the better. So in terms of, and disclaimer, I am no women's health expert or professional by any means. I am just a devoted yoga student and yoga teacher, and I can only speak for my experience and for the little knowledge that I have in this vast sea of knowledge and wisdom that is in the lineage of ashtanga yoga. But from my experience, I felt that my body needed to make very deep changes, and I needed to allow for that space, for that to happen. So sorry guys. In order for that to happen, I needed to create the space for it to change in, and I felt like continuing to do what I've been doing for years would kind of mask the experience of me really listening to my body. And so the fact of stopping and then beginning again, it was kind of like, when I began again, it was kind of like coming to it from a whole new perspective, and it wasn't about slowly adjusting as the body changed, but it was like, okay, well, this is a whole new body and I just need to begin from zero. So that for me was very helpful, and I think it was very helpful for the development of the fetus, the attachment of it, just the anatomy beginning to change. I think giving it that time was very beneficial. And just also in terms of really taking the time to listen, right, to the body and seeing what it needed on a daily basis, rather than doing what I knew worked, right, and kind of like imposing it on this new me, to put it in some way or form. And then in terms of the emotional part, I think, letting go of something that is your daily routine and that comes with like a big attachment in terms of who you are and your sense of self, to consciously and willfully let it go and step away from it, and see in that space the relationship that you really have with the practice, right? Which doesn't necessarily mean that you're practicing physically, but you're thinking about your practice and how can you move that asana practice into a devotional practice of either meditation or chanting or reading or whatever form or shape it might take for you, right? So I think it's very helpful to take that time to see the depth of to feel the depth of your practice. You might be really pleasantly surprised, and also to see the fear that comes up with letting it go, right? And with experiencing yourself outside of a practitioner of ashtanga yoga. So that to me was very beneficial, and I think in terms of then the birth and becoming a mother, it was really helpful to be flexible, to understand that there's so many things that you can't control, to be able to really listen and to be open to listening and to following the needs of the body. And even just in terms of going back to the practice, to coming to it from a new perspective, to really come to the mat and be like, okay, this is sun salutation A for this new me. How does it feel? How can I make it feel good for me right now? And I already had, having already given up the form, it's a lot easier to adapt. And then in terms of motherhood, it's just your practice once you give birth is, first of all, it takes time to rebuild. So you've already given it up once. So it's a lot easier to not feel distressed or, emotional, or, I mean, you're still going to feel emotional, but to just not feel like you also have to work with that while there's all these other things that you're working with when you have a newborn. So that's one thing, and then also the idea that once you begin practicing again, it's going to be very different. Not only is it a new body once again, but your time is limited, and so I think it makes you more receptive to allowing for whatever amount of practice you can get in, and however it looks or however it feels, but to just be able to come to the mat whenever you can at whatever level, or just more open to letting it be what it is. So those are one last thing I want to say is, you can tell this is improvised, is the heat concept, right? At the beginning of pregnancy, you really don't want to create excess heat in the body, in your abdominal organs. And ashtanga practice is all about creating heat. So that's a really important element that is worth doing research on and contemplating, and not just the twists and the actual anatomical things that also have negative effects, but the idea of the heat is what for me was the most worrisome. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't creating that, and that I allowed for the fetus to find the best conditions possible, and that I wouldn't regret afterwards not having let go of practice just for this mental attachment or emotional attachment to it, but to really begin to think about the baby, which becomes the number one priority from the moment you conceive it, right? And think about how hard you've worked to, maybe you haven't, but to get to this point, right? And so really beginning to honor baby as your guru and your practice, because that's what it's going to be. I hope I've answered your questions. I'm happy to answer more in detail, and just let me know, keep asking me questions. I'm here for you.